And for more on this, we're joined by Kate Williams, who's a royal historian. Kate, welcome.
Good evening.
This place is very much about Victoria, the private individual, the wife and mother, and not Victoria the Queen.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they bought Osborne House. The idea was they really wanted a family property. As a young woman, she felt very much as if the big palaces, the Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, they were too formal, they were too excessive, and she wanted somewhere much more intimate. So to us, Osborne House looks pretty huge, but to them, it was really a very country cottage, really, very intimate, somewhere to have a quiet family time.
And you've been there many times. You were just telling us.
And in the bathing machine as well.
Well, I'll come to that in a moment. But does it feel like you just described a little more intimate than you would expect?
It does feel much more intimate. You know, poor Albert, when he married Victoria, he was overwhelmed by how Buckingham Palace was so drafty and the drains were always leaking. So he really wanted somewhere he could control. And Victoria had done huge travels around England with her mother, and she really hadn't enjoyed them. She found them very stressful because her mother had been pushing her forward as the next queen. So actually, Isle of Wight was the only place she enjoyed herself. So she always had very fond memories of it. And when actually she came to be a young woman herself with a young queen, that was where they wanted to have a house and buy it. And it's terribly Italianate. You know, she loved the thought of going to Italy. And Albert, as you know, Nick was saying on the report, loved the idea of the Bay of Naples, compared the Isle of Wight to the Bay of Naples. So that all evoked it. And it's a really romantic place.
You touched on it slightly, which is what English Heritage have been saying, that perhaps the public will see a rather different side of Queen Victoria.
Yes, exactly. We also had this image of her as dry and dreary and an old stick in the mud. But in Osborne, she was much more fun, much more exciting. It was somewhere she could really let her hair down. And there were they've really kept all the statues and rather kind of risque statues and paintings Albert and Victoria used to give to each other as gifts. They're all there. They're all on show. And we can really see the intimacy of their family life there. And the idea of the Queen going bathing anywhere else would almost be anathema, but Osborne, she really felt free, and I just think it's wonderful that we can all run about on her beach too. They've got this marvellous Swiss cottage there that to us would be to them was a Wendy house. To us it'd be a huge house, but it was a children's Wendy house. It's really sweet.
And you were mentioning, Kate, that you've been inside this bathing machine.
I've been inside the bathing machine.
I read that after Victoria's death, it was removed from the beach and incredibly was turned into a chicken shed.
Yes, a chicken shed, because Victoria was, this is what Prince King Edward, who came after Victoria, he didn't have much respect for all the places that she adored. He was the elder son. He'd been desperate to be king, so he kind of trampled over her palaces, turned her bathing machine into a chicken shed, and it's
just on the screen there. It's an extraordinary contraption, isn't it? So just tell us a little more about what it was like when you went inside.
Well, you go in the back, and there inside you get changed. It's actually rather cramped, and considering Queen Victoria was, by the end of her life, and in her 60s, about as wide as she was tall, it was a bit crammed to get her and her attendant in there, and it has got a loo in there as well. So that's where she got changed into this, lengthy bathing costume, the frilly arms, or the frilly bloomers, and so then you went out and you could swim under cover of the awning. So it was all terribly modest and not too much sun.
I forgot there would be an attendant as well.
Yes, of course, to fit
in. Yes.
And was she, quite ahead of the times in terms of her interest in swimming and encouraging all her children to learn to swim?
Yes, well, Queen Victoria was terribly into exercise. Again, we think of her as dry and dreary at the end, but she loved a bit of vigorous exercise. Nothing more she liked than marching over the hills, a nice, dreary, wet walk. So she'd love our current weather. It'd be just up her street. She likes a nice, chilly, rainy setup. And so she swam in all kinds of weathers, and she encouraged the children to learn to swim as well, which was it really wasn't that normal, particularly for girls. It really wasn't very common to encourage girls to swim, but a lot of children at the time died of drowning because they simply couldn't swim, something that simple. And they were all very keen swimmers, and she really valued the athletic swimmer, and a lot of the children did marry rather athletic swimmers as well. So
a real insight then into the personality and the way she was trying to bring up her family.
I don't think she would have quite been in the aquatic centre, but nearly on the way. But this is, showing the beach, showing the bathing costume, showing the bathing suit, showing everything. It really, I think, brings us closer to the reality of Queen Victoria, who just wasn't as dry as we think.
And of course, Osborne House has been, it was given to the nation, wasn't it? And it's been open. But do you anticipate that a lot of members of the public will go and have a look?
Well, I'm going. I can't wait to go. I couldn't go today, but I'm off at the weekend, because I just think, and also at the Isle of Wight, these incredible beaches, these beautiful beaches, and one of the reasons why Albert and Victoria purchased the land, purchased the house, was so they could go onto the beach, and now, we can all follow them.
And how often did they go?
quite frequently when they were there in the summer. They also summered at Balmoral as well. But of course, after Albert died, everything changed. After Albert died and Victoria was left in her early 40s, a young widow, that was the end of a lot of the fun and the frolic. So she did still carry on bathing, but not still with the gaiety that she did as a young woman.
And this property, including the beach, reminded them of or made them think of Italy. And places abroad.
Well, Queen Victoria never got to go to Italy. She was always desperate to, and Albert had managed to do so before they got married. And so always, that was what he said to her. He said, I've seen Italy, and this looks just like Italy. And they had these terribly romantic dreams about Italy and the beauty of Europe. So it really was a place to get away from it all when you really can't leave Britain at all.
OK, well, it looks fascinating. I'm sure it will be a very popular tourist attraction on the Isle of Wight. Kate, thank you very much indeed for telling us about it.